welcome to the Academy of International Relations Studies interview. I'm Ceren Öztürkmen, and I will be having a conversation about populism with Dr. Zsolt Boda, Center for Social Sciences, Budapest. Welcome, Dr. Boda. Thank you for accepting to do this interview.
Thank you very much.
I was lucky enough to do an internship in the Democratic Efficacy and Varieties Populism in Europe project, also known as DEMOS project, whom Dr. Boda was conducting along with researchers from Hungarian Academy of Sciences and 15 other institutions which is partnered with the project. Would you like to introduce yourself and maybe talk more about the DEMOS project?
Yes, sure. And again, thank you for this opportunity. So I am working in the Center for Social Sciences, which was part of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, but now there was an institutional change. But anyway, it's the biggest social science research center of Hungary. And I'm a political scientist. I work here as a researcher, but actually right now I am also the general director of the center. And indeed, we have this project, DEMOS, as you nicely introduced it, Democratic Efficacy and the Varieties of Populism in Europe, which is a EU project. So the EU is funding it. It started in 2019, and it will run 1.5 years still, one more and a half year. And it's a consortium project, meaning that we have 15 members, 15 different universities from all across Europe, from Poland, Germany, even the UK is still there, Barcelona, France, Italy, etc. So it's a big consortium, and I am proud to say that we are leading this consortium. So it's very important for us. And indeed, this is dealing with populism and how to interpret populism, how to better understand it, and maybe what to propose to face the challenges of populism.
Great, thank you so much. I thought it would be great to start with the fundamental questions. Hence, my first question is, what is populism and who is populist?
Yes, it's a very difficult question, actually. Yeah. So it's you have to ask it again and again, because even in political science, actually, it's a very contested concept. I have colleagues who say that populism is not a useful concept because it's very difficult to define it. Generally, we say that populism is a kind of approach which put the people first, which valorizes the people as such. This is the positive part of it, of course, talking in the name of, on behalf of the people or for the people. But at the same time, populism has also a negative side because it's very anti-elitist. So it's very much criticizing the elites, sometimes with good reasons, I have to say, because of course, elites are sometimes indeed corrupt. Sometimes elites are not democratic enough. But populism is giving a general critique of the elites, political elites, media elites, economic elites, etc. And also, since populism valorizes very much the people, it has a tendency to homogenize it. So for populists, the people is a homogeneous entity, like the Turkish people or the Hungarian people. And those who do not fit their definitions, who are a little bit different, for instance, now in Hungary, our government has some populist appeal, I would say, and they are targeting LGBTQ people, for instance. So for them, the real Hungarian people do not include LGBTQ people. So this is a problem with populism, that it is also sometimes very much critical or even hostile, I would say, not only towards elites, but also towards some minorities which do not fit their definition of the people or who do not agree with them, So that's the problem with populism. And why is it a contested concept? Because populists can be left-wing, can be right-wing. This is a very general definition, the one I just gave you, and which is generally accepted in political science. So sometimes it's very difficult to say that is a politician a populist politician or just a radical right politician? Is the left-wing populism the same kind of populism, the same kind of thing as the right-wing populism? Because, for instance, left-wing populism, the one that you can see in Spain, on Greece, or in Latin America, is much more inclusionary in general. So they are talking about socioeconomic problems of the people. This is left-wing. The right-wing populism is more exclusionary, is more nationalistic. So there is a real debate whether we can say that those politicians or those movements or those ideas are populist anyway, even if they are very different, because one is a leftist and the other is a right-wing populism.
Thank you so much. You just mentioned the left and right-wing populism, but is there a good or bad populism? If there is, why we are hearing that it's being negative thing?
Yes, again, this is a very hot topic, and the way the European Union, for instance, framed this project, how to say, the call for project, it was when we applied with our ideas, the basic approach was kind of critical, that the European Union was expecting project proposals which would study populism and which would propose some ways or tools or policies to cope with the challenge of populism. So this suggests, indeed, as you said, that populism is something bad. Now, as I said, populism has a positive side, and it's on one hand, it's very democratic because it's talking about the people. It's talking about the majoritarian ideas. And sometimes in societies, you know, there is a silent majority. There is a silent majority whose interests or rights are not properly taken into account. There are socioeconomic problems. So populism can be also interpreted as a sign, a warning sign that indeed there are problems in society, problems of political representations. Maybe there are groups, large groups, which are not represented in politics, or problems of inequality, poverty. Indeed, also in DEMOS, we found that there is a statistical correlation between joblessness of young people. So in those countries where young people are not active enough, so there is an unemployment among the youth, then there is a higher probability of populist politics to emerge. So sometimes populism is good because it shows that there are some problems. However, at the same time, as I said, populism sometimes is very exclusionary. It's very anti-pluralist because they have a homogeneous conception of the people, and everybody who is not agreeing with them, you know, they are enemies. So populism has a tendency to become very exclusionary, intolerant even, anti-plural, and also it has a leaning toward illiberalism because populism is really valorizing the people, the majoritarian interest, and they are not really, or populist politicians are not really, how to say it, open towards different ideas, toward compromises, towards the interest or the rights of the minorities, human rights, rule of law, etc. Because they say that what people say is sacrosanct. You know, this is majoritarian decision, we should implement it. And we don't care about rules, constitutions, because the people has spoken, you know. And it has some problems because today's liberal democracies are democracies, so they should be built on a majoritarian decision-making or will of the people, okay? But they are also constitutional democracies. The liberal democracy is much more than a majoritarian decision-making procedure, you know. We have constitution, we have the rule of law, we have checks and balances, division of powers, we have the protection of minority interests, etc. And unfortunately, populism sometimes is very hostile towards these, let's say, liberal or constitutional elements of the liberal democracy. So that's why, indeed, populism has some positive role, has some democratic potential, but at the same time, it also might become a threat, a danger towards minorities, towards the rule of law or the constitution. Just think about now Donald Trump term is just finished, so we can look back as a historical period in the history of the United States. And what he was doing was very much populist to some extent. Actually, it's also very interesting because I don't know the recent data, but if you look at the 2016 elections when Donald Trump was elected, you know, there is a correlation between the votes Trump got in certain counties all around in the US and the health problems and socioeconomic problems in those counties. So simply put, poor people and people with bad health and all kind of problems voted for Trump. Isn't it somehow ironic, because Trump didn't really care about them? I mean, Trump even wanted to abolish Obamacare, you know, the healthcare system of the United States, which is a very, you know, in the US, there is no general healthcare system, so it's a problem there. So, you know, those people, those desperate people were voting for Trump. He was the populist leader, but at the end, he didn't really care about those people. So this is also a problem of populism, that it's promising things, but he's not achieving. There are now new analyses which show that indeed populist leaders do not decrease the inequality. Inequality, social inequality, income inequality is a factor behind populism. But when populists got elected, they do not solve this problem. They do not decrease inequality. So yeah, there are a number of problems with populism, and when is it good, when is it bad? It's a long debate.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, my following question, you partly answered it. Should we think populism as the biggest challenge to the democratic societies in today's world?
Yes, well, I don't know whether it's the biggest challenge, but certainly it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and also because what is populism? Populism is one hand is political movements, it's politicians like Donald Trump or Viktor Orban, etc. But also populism is a kind of mindset. Actually, Cas Mudde, a Dutch researcher, coined this term already in 2004, that we are living in a populist zeitgeist, in a populist era, in a populist, times. And I think that this is very much true. So for instance, think about the social media. Social media has a very populist logic. You know, people are criticizing the elite. There are always very smart people there in the social media who are giving you advices and who are telling you that no, the COVID-19 pandemic is not existing. Vaccination is dangerous because Bill Gates want to inject into us chips and things like this.
Conspiracy theories,
Conspiracy theories, conteos, etc. So in a sense, populism is much more than politics and politicians. Populism is, I think, it's a kind of mindset which is very much present in today's life. And again, those conspiracy theories, okay, we may look at them as just stupid histories that people invent, but they illustrate a very populist logic. We are criticizing the elites. The elites are bad. They are corrupt. You know, Bill Gates want to inject like chips, or George Soros, or Brussels, the European Union, or the IMF, or whatever. You know, so all these are very. And I think that these conteos, these conspiracy theories are dangerous to some extent, because they undermine the legitimacy of the health system. They undermine the legitimacy of expertise. They undermine the legitimacy of our institutional, our institutional setting of our society. I mean, each society needs some institutions, needs some authority, and that should be respected. So it's a tricky question, that sometimes it's good to criticize elites because, again, elites are not saints. And there are problems that should be emphasized. But on the other hand, populism as such is a very complex and very often negative phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, we talk about a little bit about policy making, but my question is how right-wing populist movements reflect to the policy making? Because I think you have a couple articles you published about the policy making as well.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Indeed, this is my specialty. So I am dealing mostly with policy studies and governance. And indeed, we just published an article which is about how populists govern, because populism for a long time was either fringe movement, small parties, fringe parties, or populist politicians were in the opposition. But in the past years, in many countries, we already mentioned the United States with Donald Trump, or Hungary, populist leaders came into power. In Italy, the Five-Star Movement is also considered to be a populist party, etc. So I think it's an interesting question that okay, this populist discourse which is happening from the opposition, or in social medias or whatever, it's one thing. But what happens when those populist leaders get to power? So how do they govern? What kind of decisions do they make? And as I said, in political science, there is a general agreement, which goes back also actually to the ideas of caste mude that I already mentioned, that populism is a thin ideology, which does not have a programmatic or ideological core. That's why it can become either left-wing or right-wing. So, populists in government, they can do very different things. So there is no such thing as populist policy making or populist governance. And of course, this is so, but still we try to come up with a model. And we were talking about policy processes, policy content, and policy discourses. And we try to create this populist model that we checked on the Hungarian case, and it seems that it works. So, for instance, I don't want to enter all the details. You can read the article, which is an open access article, actually in the journal Politics and Governance. But in terms of content, of course, Caspida is right. Populist politicians can be left-wing, right-wing, can be neoliberal or socially more responsible, etc. So there are different. But in any time, populist politicians follow this majoritarian logic. So this is one thing, and this can also mean, as I already referred to this, that populist politicians their decisions are hostile towards minorities, because they say, like in Hungary, the LGBTQ people, they are targeted by the government because they say that the majority is not like this. The Hungarian people is not gay and whatever, So majoritarianism, for instance, is such thing. The other thing is that because populists are critical towards the elite, also towards experts and technocracy, sometimes they make very bold changes, big policy changes, because usually policies are changing very incremental, very slowly, because there is an expert consensus. If you want to introduce a new health policy, well, it's difficult, but there are so many interests, and there are experts who are telling you that don't do this, don't do that, etc. So in policy making, it's a common place that policies are changing slowly. But populist politicians, they are more bold. They are more, because they don't care. They say that, oh, I don't care about experts. We will do this. So this radical change is maybe also a defining trait of populist policy making. Also, in terms of processes, as populist politicians, as I said, don't really respect the constitution, the rule of law, because they say that I have a popular legitimacy. What people want is it is what we should follow, So there is a direct link between the people and me, and I want to make decisions, and I don't care about all these institutional procedures and veto players and compromise seeking, whatever. No, I just want to make the decision. So sometimes they find ways to circumvent institutions. This kind of anti-institutionalism is also, I think, a defining, or might be taken as an ideal, typical trait of populist policymaking. And of course, in terms of discourses, populism is known to refer to crisis. Populist politicians just like very much crisis, immigration crisis, or economic crisis, or corruption, etc. There are huge problems that we should solve, and I have to solve. So this crisis communication, this adversarial narratives towards minorities, again, which do not fit the definition of the people, etc. So just to put it shortly, I think, and we suggest that maybe there is a way to define an ideal type of populist policymaking and governance along content, processes, procedures, and communication or discourses. But of course, we have to check it. But we have some more time and research to work also inside of DEMOS.
Yeah. Well, going back to the DEMOS, DEMOS is a research project aiming to better understand populism, as you mentioned when we start interview. There are many studies in the literature about populism, and especially after the discussions about rise of populism, they're increasing in number. So what can your project bring to the existing literature?
Yes. Very good question again. Of course, populism is indeed a widely studied phenomenon, but actually one aspect that the DEMOS project is bringing in is just what I was talking about, this macro level, this governance, policy making. It has been neglected in the literature. Political science literature has been focusing more on populist leaders, populist movements, populist parties, populist communication, what is populism, etc. But what happens when they are in power? How do they change governance? How do they change institutions? I have colleagues in the Legal Studies Institute here in our center. They are also working in DEMOS, who are working on populist constitutionalism, for instance. How populism is redefining constitution, how populism is redefining governance or the institutions. So this kind of macro level analysis, I think this is a novelty of DEMOS because it hasn't really been studied yet, or not really. However, at the same time, we are also working on the individual level. So we have the University of Amsterdam, who is also part of our consortium. We have psychologist colleagues working there, and we are working also on experiments and studying what is the mindset that how to say it, increases the probability that somebody accepts populist worldview. You know, so for instance, there is a finding that anger is a predictor of populist attitudes. So those people who are angry, who are frustrated, they are more prone towards populist ideas, for instance. So I think the DEMOS is working not only at the macro level, but also at the micro level, the individual level problems or factors of populism. And we are also trying to come up with some ideas that what can be done. For instance, we just developed the concept of democratic efficacy, which builds on the idea of political efficacy, which is a well-known concept in political science, which is about whether people feel that they are able to represent their interest and whether the political system is open to their initiatives. So this is a personal feeling. This is called political efficacy. And we coupled it with some measures of political capacities, meaning that people are knowledgeable about politics, informed, you know, they share the basic political values or not, etc. And we found that indeed some combination of political efficacy feelings or inefficacy feelings and capacities show that which are those people who are more open to populist ideas. So put it simply, people who are open to populism are generally have this political inefficacy feeling about the political system. This is called external efficacy. So they don't have doubts about themselves, but they have doubts about the political system, which again shows that populism is an answer to a felt problem. You know, so people with populist attitude generally feel that the political system is not open to their problems and their interests. And also political capacities are important. People who don't have strong political capacities, they don't read journals, they don't know about politics, they are not really, they are more, how to say, polarized in terms of ideologies, you know, they are again more open to populist ideas. So if we can really identify those patterns, maybe we can also propose some policies, what to do, how to increase, for instance, the political capacities of people through civic education, local or school level democratic practices, you know, because if you are practiced in democracy, if you know more about how democracy works, apparently you are less vulnerable or less open to populist ideas. So this is just to say that DEMOS is well, it's a 3.5 year long project with 15 members. So it's a big project with different topics, not only macro level, but also micro level and this policy proposal. I hope that we can contribute to the literature. We can contribute to this debates about populism and make some analysis about the phenomenon as such, and also maybe to propose solutions.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time today with me doing this interview. Likewise, thank you to the audience for watching us. If you anyone from the audience like to get more information about the DEMOS project, follow the articles, and you can find the information about the project website, podcast, and social media accounts down below. You can also subscribe to DEMOS newsletter, and you can also join online events and discussions forums on the website. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to add anything about DEMOS project at the end?
No, you just said what I wanted to say, that please follow us on these channels if you are interested in this project. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.